Hi, I'm Julia Hamm, President and CEO of the Smart Electric Power Alliance, and I am so excited to be here today with my good friend Jeff Guldner, President and CEO of Pinnacle West Corporation, the parent company of Arizona Public Service. Jeff, thanks so much for taking some time to chat with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see you, Julia.
Yeah. So back in January of 2020, you and the company announced that you were setting a target of getting to carbon free by 2050 with an interim target just 10 years out, getting to 65% carbon free. Talk to me about what were the drivers that led the company to set those targets?
I think there's a number of them. And one of the things that was important for us is that we were well along that road. So we were moving towards a low carbon system, but we had never articulated it before. And so what we did is we got the strategy team, the executive team together, and we began to talk about, what's really important is to set that goal so that you can then begin to align around, the long-term target of 2050. But what do we do now in the interim to get there? And then what are some specific strategies that we're going to have to deal with, for example, fuel for steel. So how we have to accelerate into batteries, how we have to tackle some of the challenges around storage, and particularly seasonal storage. And you really can't do that until you've articulated the destination that you're seeking to go to.
Yeah, and so even before you set the targets, as you said, the company had already been well down that path. What were some of the drivers that over the past, say, 5 years that had been, and I know your progress has actually goes back decades, not just 5 years, but in the recent past, what have been some of the things that have really been accelerating the company's commitment to clean energy?
I think, so we're in the desert Southwest, and one of the important things when you look at regional energy strategy or regional energy policy is looking at the resource mix that's best suited for you and your customers. And so we have long been involved in research and development around solar energy. We have more sunlight in the desert Southwest than any region in the country. And so we knew that that was going to be a cornerstone to it. And we also saw early on the duck curve issues. And so we've known for 5 years or longer that as we see more solar penetration coming across the system, it's going to create that duck curve phenomenon. And so again, you got to start looking at how do you solve that? And so we had been doing things around rate design to try to encourage customers to shift use into that trough period. We've now got some super off-peak rates that we actually use in the winter rates. And so we began to take some steps that could really align around what we knew was going to happen as more solar came to Arizona. And it's now just iterating on that strategy. So it's looking at you're not just going to be able to do this with shifting loads. And I've said for a long time that thermal storage is an important storage resource. We tend to think about storage as being batteries or maybe pump hydro, but thermal storage in a home is going to be a critical storage resource for us. So we know we've got to make progress there, but then we've also got to look now at the technology around batteries, and that technology is evolving. And then the third piece that we don't have a good solution for yet, but I think is encouraging as people start talking about hydrogen and other things, is how do you go after that seasonal storage so that the abundant sunlight that we've got in April, we can harness the energy and then dispatch it in the summer.
Yeah. So how do you think, here we are in this COVID-19 pandemic, what new challenges or barriers might be in front of us as we hopefully soon emerge from the current situation?
Yeah, I think there's a spectrum or a range of different challenges that we'll see. And so one is, what will this do for society at large? And I think you can see there's a lot of discussions that say this is a crisis that emerged on us over a period of months. And climate change is an issue that's evolving, but it's evolving over a period of years. And so I think there's a nice catalyst to say, we've got to get ahead of things so that we can begin to address some of the challenges before just waiting until the last minute. But there's clearly going to be changes that this will create to the economy. It's going to present, I expect, some challenges around growth. We still see good data center growth here in Arizona. We still are expecting to see good customer growth. But what will this do in the next 1, 2, or 3 years? Certainly, price pressure is an issue right now, and so the regulators are concerned about putting costs onto customers. And anytime you're looking at putting new resources on, right, you're going to have that. We're trying to manage it to the rate of inflation. Mm-hmm. But that's, I think, going to be one of the challenges. Is just, does this, what do you need to do with your timing? If you see load that's not coming that was in our growth forecasts, how does that get reflected in our resource plan? And then in the near term, one of the challenges is just getting together with stakeholders and with the regulator. It's obviously much more challenging when you're socially distant, and thinking about how we're going to do hearings or how we're going to do commission proceedings. It's just not as effective, not as fulfilling as when you're there in person. But that's probably on the nearer term spectrum right now.
One of the things that I'd be curious to hear from you is advice you have for other leaders about how do you balance the focus between the near-term immediate things you need to be doing specific to the current crisis, making sure that your employees and customers are safe, that your customers still have affordable and reliable electricity, but at the same time, not lose focus on these long-term strategic issues. Do you have any practical advice for other leaders on how do you strike that right balance?
Yeah, it's clearly a balance that you need to strike. One of the things that we did early is we knew that priority had to be exactly what you said. Let's work very hard. And I think my focus and the team's focus in the first month or so of this was almost entirely around how do we get testing for our critical employees? How do we get PPE in abundance so that we can continue to be out in the field and doing the work? How do we make changes in the workplace? When do we send people home? How do we get the telework to go seamlessly? And I think it's been good. We moved within a couple of days. It probably took us a week to go up to 140 call center associates working from home. And so we've been able to provide pretty seamless customer service across that time frame. And then what we recognized was that when the team was really engaged and we had the cadence going and we were taking the appropriate steps, we then stepped back and said, let's start doing some scenario modeling. And so we've now got to look at what are some near-term scenarios with the pandemic. And it's basically spread across how severe is it going to be? Is it a long or a short duration issue? And then how bad is the economic impact going to be? Is it severe or is it going to be a relatively quick recovery? And that's where we began to then continue to keep the focus on what does this mean for the longer term strategy. And so we just adapted it, but we waited until we got a month or so into it. So we knew we had the near term issues under control. But then we very deliberately said, we're not just going to focus on this. We're going to have to now look at how it potentially affects and how we'll navigate around the longer term plan.
Well, Jeff, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me. But more importantly, thank you for your leadership in the industry, everything that you're doing for everyone, all the customers in Arizona, but really stepping out there as a leader in the utility industry and your commitment to this carbon-free energy future that we're all working towards.
Yeah, great, Julia. Thanks for having me. It was fun talking to you.
Thanks for watching. This is just one in a series of interviews I'm doing with utility CEOs around the U.S. If you'd like to see more, please visit our website at sepapower.org or subscribe to our YouTube channel.